When a man can't stop thinking about you, it's not because you demanded his time, chased his attention, or tried to prove your worth. It's because something about you reached a place inside him that logic alone can't control. A man's mind is wired to respond to impact, not pressure. Pressure makes him retreat. Impact makes him pause, reflect, and return in his thoughts again and again. Emotional impact is subtle, but it is powerful. It's created in moments when you didn't try too hard, when you showed up as yourself, when you spoke with calm confidence, when you listened without judgment, or when you walked away instead of arguing. Those moments lodge themselves deep in a man's memory. A man doesn't obsess over a woman because she's always available. Availability is common. Impact is rare. Impact happens when a woman knows who she is and moves through the world without needing validation from a man. When you don't rush to reply, when you don't over-explain yourself, when you don't beg to be chosen, his mind starts filling in the gaps. Men are problem solvers by nature. When something feels unfinished, unresolved, or slightly out of reach, their mind keeps returning to it. You become that unanswered question. Attention can be given to anyone. Emotional impact cannot. A man may give attention out of boredom, attraction, or convenience, but emotional impact happens when he feels something shift inside him. Maybe you challenged him in a way that made him think differently. Maybe you inspired him without trying. Maybe you made him feel respected, appreciated, or understood in a way he didn't even realize he was missing. Men don't talk much about these moments, but they carry them. They replay them. They sit with them in silence. A lot of women believe that if they just do more, love harder, explain better, or show more effort, a man will finally see their value. But that's not how a man's mind works. Value isn't something you convince him of. Value is something he discovers on his own. And discovery only happens when there is space to think. When you pull back instead of pushing forward, his mind finally has room to process what you mean to him. When a man feels emotional impact, his ego becomes involved. His ego starts asking questions he didn't expect to ask. Why does her absence bother me? Why do I keep checking my phone? Why does the idea of her moving on make me uncomfortable? Ego doesn't like uncertainty, especially when it comes to a woman who made him feel significant. Once his ego is involved, he starts paying attention differently. He becomes more aware of your tone, your boundaries, your energy. He starts noticing things he ignored before. What most people don't understand is that men often realize emotional attachment after distance, not during closeness. During closeness, they enjoy the moment. During distance, they analyze it. That's why chasing a man rarely works. Chasing removes the very space his mind needs to recognize what you bring to his life. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop trying to control the outcome, you give his mind permission to do its natural work. A man thinking about you constantly doesn't always look romantic on the surface. Sometimes it looks like confusion. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like mixed signals. Inside his mind, there's a quiet tug of war between comfort and fear. Comfort says you feel good, you feel familiar, you feel right. Fear says commitment requires responsibility, consistency, and emotional risk. Emotional impact intensifies this internal conflict. That's why men don't always act immediately on their feelings. They sit with them. They wrestle with them. Impact is also created when you don't abandon yourself for a relationship. When you keep your routines, your goals, your friendships, and your sense of purpose, you send a powerful message without saying a word. You show him that being with you is a choice, not a necessity. Men respect choice far more than need. Need feels heavy to him. Choice feels empowering. When a man senses that you choose him but don't need him to survive emotionally, his respect deepens. Respect is the foundation of long-term attachment for a man. Another thing that creates emotional impact is unpredictability in the healthiest sense. Not chaos, not games, but authenticity. When you respond honestly instead of predictably. When you don't always react emotionally. When you surprise with emotional maturity instead of drama. His mind remembers that. It stands out. Men encounter attraction often, but emotional maturity is rare. When a man meets it, he doesn't forget it easily. A woman who creates impact doesn't threaten a man into staying. She doesn't use ultimatums or guilt. She lets her absence speak. Silence, when used with self-respect, is not punishment, it's clarity. Silence allows him to hear his own thoughts, and often those thoughts circle back to you. He starts to realize how you made him feel calm, understood, motivated, or grounded. He notices the difference between your energy and the energy of others. When emotional impact is present, even other women don't fully distract him. He may laugh, flirt, or socialize, but his mind keeps comparing. Not consciously at first, but emotionally. Other interactions feel lighter, less meaningful. You become the emotional reference point. And once a man has a reference point, his standards shift. That's when you know impact has occurred. A man doesn't always miss a woman the moment she leaves. Sometimes he misses her when life gets quiet, when he has a bad day and realizes you were the one who knew how to listen, when something good happens and he instinctively wants to tell you, when he feels misunderstood by others and remembers how seen he felt with you. Those realizations come later, but they come deeply. The mistake many women make is returning too soon. They sense he's thinking about them and rush back in, trying to secure the connection. But emotional impact needs time to solidify. When you allow him to sit with his feelings long enough, they grow roots. When you interrupt that process, you reset it. Patience is not passive. Patience is strategic emotional confidence. A woman who understands her impact doesn't need constant reassurance. She trusts the effect she has. She doesn't measure her worth by response times or consistency in the early stages. She knows that what matters most is how a man feels when she's not around. If he feels restless, reflective, and curious in her absence, she has already won a powerful position in his mind. Men fall in love differently than women. Women fall in love through connection and expression. Men fall in love through realization. Realization takes time and space. Emotional impact accelerates realization, but it cannot be forced. When it happens naturally, it changes a man. He becomes more intentional, more attentive, more serious. Not because he was pushed, but because he arrived there on his own. When a man can't stop thinking about you, it's not luck. It's not magic. It's the result of how you showed up without losing yourself. It's the calm strength you carried. It's the boundaries you didn't announce but lived. It's the respect you gave yourself even when you cared deeply. That combination leaves a mark. And once a man feels that kind of impact, even if he tries to ignore it, even if he delays action, even if he pretends he's unaffected, his mind keeps returning to you. Because emotional impact doesn't fade easily. It settles, it grows, and eventually it demands a response. Silence and space are misunderstood in relationships, especially from a woman's point of view. Many women grow up believing that love is proven through communication, reassurance, and constant emotional presence. So when silence appears, it feels like danger, it feels like rejection, loss, or abandonment. But in a man's emotional world, silence and space function very differently. They are not absence, they are mirrors. They reflect back to him what he feels, what he fears, and what he values. And when a woman understands this, she stops fighting silence and starts letting it work for her. A man's feelings don't usually surface while everything is loud and emotionally crowded. When there is constant texting, explaining, checking in, arguing, or fixing, his mind stays busy responding instead of reflecting. He reacts, but he doesn't process. Silence removes distraction. Space removes noise. And when those two appear together, a man is left alone with his thoughts. That's when emotions he didn't know how to name begin to rise. When you stop filling every gap with words, his mind fills it for you. He begins replaying moments you shared, conversations that felt different, energy that felt calm or exciting. He starts noticing the contrast between how he felt with you and how he feels without you. Silence forces comparison, and comparison forces awareness. Awareness is the beginning of emotional attachment for a man. Many women think silence is a tactic or a game. It's not. Silence is powerful only when it's natural and rooted in self-respect. If silence comes from anger, manipulation, or fear, a man feels that energy and resists it. But when silence comes from a woman who is grounded, emotionally stable, and secure in herself, it creates curiosity instead of defensiveness. He doesn't feel punished. He feels unsettled in a way that makes him think. Space gives a man the opportunity to feel lost before it's permanent. That's important. Men don't respond well to emotional pressure, but they respond deeply to emotional contrast. When you are present, warm, and engaged, and then you calmly step back, his nervous system notices the difference. He may not call it missing you at first. He may just feel off. Something feels quieter, something feels incomplete. That discomfort is the mirror working. Silence also removes your emotional labor from his life. Many men rely on a woman's emotional presence more than they realize. They get used to her listening, supporting, understanding, and soothing. When that disappears, even temporarily, the absence is loud. He starts recognizing how much emotional value you were adding, not because you told him, but because he feels it. One of the biggest mistakes women make is explaining their silence. The moment you explain why you pulled back, you rob silence of its power. Explanation turns reflection to negotiation. Now his mind is busy responding instead of feeling. Silence doesn't need justification. It needs consistency. When you pull back calmly and stay emotionally composed, his mind starts working overtime trying to understand what changed. Men often test silence before they respect it. They may delay reaching out. They may act indifferent. They may even distract themselves. This isn't because silence failed. It's because his ego is trying to regain control. A man's ego doesn't like feeling affected by something it can't manage. But the longer silence holds without emotional reaction, the more his ego softens and gives way to honesty. That's when real feelings surface. Space also shifts the power dynamic without confrontation. Power doesn't come from dominance or control. It comes from emotional independence. When a woman doesn't chase clarity, demand reassurance, or push for answers, she shows emotional strength. That strength commands respect. And respect is essential for a man to take a woman seriously in the long term. Silence forces a man to ask himself questions he avoided. Do I miss her? Why does her absence bother me? What does it say about me that I want to reach out? These questions don't arise when everything is emotionally available. They arise in stillness, and stillness is uncomfortable for someone who isn't used to facing their inner world. Another thing silence does is expose intention. When a man values you, silence draws him closer. When he doesn't, silence creates distance. Either outcome gives clarity, but only one builds connection. Silence doesn't create feelings that weren't there. It reveals the truth of what already existed. That's why it's a mirror. It reflects reality, not illusion. Space also gives you clarity. When you step back, you're no longer emotionally immersed in trying to manage the relationship. You start observing instead of reacting. You see his effort, his consistency, and his initiative more clearly. Silence protects you from overinvesting in potential instead of reality. It grounds you. A man who is emotionally connected doesn't feel relieved by your silence. He feels it. He notices it. He wonders about it. He may not express it immediately, but it changes his behavior. He becomes more thoughtful, more aware, more intentional. Silence slows everything down, and slow is where men process emotions best. Silence also interrupts unhealthy emotional cycles. If a relationship has patterns of conflict, overcommunication, or emotional highs and lows, space resets the nervous system. It removes the adrenaline and allows both people to return to baseline. From that place, decisions are clear and emotions are more honest. Many women fear that silence will make a man forget them, but forgetting doesn't happen in silence. Forgetting happens in emotional noise. When everything is loud, repetitive, and predictable, it fades into the background. Silence creates contrast. Contrast creates memory. Memory keeps you present in his mind, even when you're not physically there. Silence teaches a man how to value your presence. When something is always available, it's taken for granted. When it's temporarily removed, its importance becomes visible. This isn't about punishment or manipulation. It's about allowing natural emotional consequences to occur. When you stop doing what you always did, his mind starts asking why. Space also communicates boundaries without words. It says, I respect myself enough not to chase what isn't meeting me halfway. Men understand boundaries better through action than conversation. Silence is action. Calm distance is action. And action speaks louder than explanation. When a man finally reaches out after silence, the way you respond matters. Calm, warm, centered, not accusatory, not desperate. That response confirms what his mind has been processing. It reassures him that your silence wasn't a game, but a reflection of emotional maturity. That combination deepens attraction. Silence also removes the illusion of control. Many men believe they control the pace and direction of a connection. When a woman steps back gracefully, challenges that belief. Not aggressively, but subtly. It forces him to decide whether he wants to step forward or let the distance grow. That decision point is critical. It moves him from passive to intentional. A woman who understands silence doesn't fear losing a man. She trusts that what's meant to stay will step forward. She doesn't use silence to manipulate outcomes, but to protect her peace. And that peace is magnetic. Men are drawn to emotional stability far more than emotional intensity. Silence gives a man the chance to miss you in a way words never could. Missing isn't about absence alone. It's about emotional recognition. It's about realizing that someone mattered more than expected. That realization doesn't come from conversation. It comes from quiet moments when your presence is gone and your impact remains. Men fall in love in a way that often confuses women because it doesn't follow the same emotional timeline. Women tend to fall in love through connection, closeness, communication, and shared emotional moments. They feel it, express it, and then deepen it through bonding. Men, on the other hand, fall in love mentally first, emotionally second, and verbally last. That order is critical to understand because it explains why a man can feel deeply attached to a woman long before he ever says the words or even fully understands what he's feeling. A man's mind is the gateway to his heart. Before his emotions take over, his thoughts need to make sense of the experience. He analyzes how a woman fits into his life, how she affects his routine, how she makes him feel about himself, and whether being with her elevates or complicates his world. This doesn't mean he's cold or calculating. It means he is wired to protect himself from emotional risk by processing everything through logic first. When a man starts thinking about a woman often, that's the first sign that love is forming. His thoughts return to her when he's busy, when he's quiet, when he's alone. He replays conversations, remembers small details, and wonders how she would react in certain situations. This mental engagement is not casual. Men don't invest mental energy lightly. If she occupies his thoughts, it's because she's made an impression that goes beyond attraction. Mental attachment grows when a woman challenges a man's usual patterns. She doesn't always agree with him just to keep the peace. She doesn't shrink herself to be liked. She has her own opinions, her own rhythm, her own life. That independence forces his mind to engage. He can't categorize her easily. She doesn't fit into a box. And when a man can't simplify a woman, he thinks about her more. As his mind engages, his emotions slowly follow. He starts feeling protected without knowing why. He feels unsettled when she's distant. He feels calm when she's present. These emotional responses sneak up on him because he didn't invite them consciously. That's why men are often surprised by their own feelings. They didn't plan to care this much. It just happened while they were thinking. At this stage, a man may not act consistently. His emotions are growing, but his logic hasn't fully caught up yet. He feels something, but he hasn't decided what it means. This is where women often get anxious. They sense the connection, but don't see verbal confirmation. What they don't realize is that verbal confirmation is the last step for a man, not the first. A man needs internal certainty before he speaks his feelings. Words carry weight for him. Saying something out loud makes it real, and once it's real, he feels responsible for it. Responsibility is not something men take lightly, especially when it involves another person's heart. So he waits until his mind and emotions align. During this mental emotional phase, a woman's behavior matters more than her words. Men believe actions more than explanations. If a woman remains steady, self-respecting, and emotionally balanced, his mind interprets her as safe and valuable. Safety doesn't mean boring. It means consistent. It means emotionally mature. It means not unpredictable in a destructive way. When a woman tries to force verbal clarity too early, it disrupts the natural process. His mind feels pressured to reach a conclusion before it's ready. Pressure doesn't speed up love for a man. It delays it. It creates resistance. Love for a man grows best when he feels free to arrive at it on his own. As his emotions deepen, he starts imagining her in his future, not in a dramatic way, but in practical moments. He wonders how she would fit into his daily life, how she would react to stress, how she would support his goals. These thoughts are quiet but powerful. They signal that his mind is integrating her into his sense of self. Even then, he may not speak. This silence is often misinterpreted as disinterest. In reality, it's processing. Men process internally. They sit with feelings before they share them. When they do finally speak, it's usually because the feeling has become undeniable. He's no longer guessing. He knows. When a man finally verbalizes his feelings, it often comes suddenly from a woman's perspective. She may think it came out of nowhere, but in his mind, it's been building for a long time. He's already gone through doubt, fear, analysis, and acceptance. The words are just the final step. Understanding this sequence protects a woman from self-doubt. She stops interpreting silence as lack of interest. She stops chasing reassurance. She allows space for his process while staying grounded in her own worth. That balance is crucial. It allows love to grow without anxiety. A woman who understands how men fall in love doesn't rush the outcome. She focuses on how she shows up, not on controlling the timeline. She knows that if a man is thinking about her often, if his emotions are shifting, the words will come when they're real. Men respect a woman who doesn't need constant verbal validation. That doesn't mean she accepts confusion or disrespect. It means she trusts the process while maintaining her boundaries. That combination creates emotional safety for a man, which allows him to move forward instead of pulling back. A man who falls in love mentally first often loves deeply and loyally once he commits. Because he didn't rush the decision, he stands firmly in it. He knows why he chose her. He's thought it through. And that certainty is what makes his commitment strong. Love that grows this way may take longer to appear on the surface, but it lasts longer once it does. It's rooted in understanding, respect, and emotional alignment. That's why patience is not weakness in love, it's wisdom. When a woman understands that men fall in love in stages, she stops trying to skip steps. She allows his mind to engage, his emotions to follow, and his words to come naturally. And when they do, they carry weight, sincerity, and intention. This is why a man who takes his time to say how he feels is often more serious than the one who says it quickly. His love wasn't impulsive. It was realized. And realized love is the kind that stays. The woman who stays on a man's mind is never the one begging to be chosen, chasing clarity, or shrinking herself to keep his attention. She is the woman who knows her worth so deeply that she never feels the need to negotiate it. This kind of confidence is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable. And that is exactly why it leaves such a lasting imprint on a man's mind. A man can sense when a woman values herself. It shows in how she speaks, how she moves, how she reacts under pressure, and how she handles uncertainty. She doesn't panic when things feel unclear. She doesn't over-explain her feelings hoping to be understood. She doesn't abandon her standards just to keep someone close. Her self-worth is internal, not dependent on his approval, and that independence is magnetic. Men are drawn to women who respect themselves because respect creates emotional gravity. When a woman knows her worth, she doesn't demand respect, she expects it. And expectation shapes behavior. A man may not consciously realize it at first, but he feels it. He notices that she doesn't tolerate inconsistency, mixed signals, or half-effort. Not through confrontation, but through choice. She simply doesn't engage with what doesn't align. This kind of woman doesn't threaten to leave. She doesn't use ultimatums. She doesn't weaponize emotions. She lets her actions speak. If something doesn't feel right, she creates distance calmly. That calmness is powerful. It unsettles a man far more than anger ever could. Anger's predictable. Calm withdrawal forces reflection. When a woman negotiates her worth, she teaches a man that her boundaries are flexible. She teaches him that if he pushes a little harder, delays a little longer, or gives a little less, she'll still stay. But when a woman refuses to negotiate her worth, she teaches him something very different. She teaches him that access to her is a privilege, not a guarantee. That lesson stays with a man long after the moment passes. A woman who knows her worth doesn't compete with other women. She doesn't compare herself. She doesn't feel threatened by attention he gives elsewhere. Not because she doesn't care, but because she knows that what's meant for her won't require her to prove herself. That level of inner security creates peace in her presence. And peace is rare. Men encounter attraction often, but emotional peace is uncommon. When they find it, they remember it. Knowing your worth also means being honest about what you want without apologizing for it. This kind of woman doesn't pretend she's okay with less than she desires just to seem easygoing. She doesn't lower her expectations to be liked. She expresses herself clearly and then watches behavior, not promises. Men respect clarity far more than people realize. Confusion exhausts them. Calm honesty grounds them. A woman who knows her worth understands that consistency is the bare minimum, not a bonus. She doesn't reward minimal effort with maximum access. She doesn't overvalue potential while ignoring reality. She stays present, but she stays aware. That awareness keeps her from getting lost in emotional attachment before trust is built. When a man senses that a woman will walk away from what doesn't honor her, something shifts inside him. He becomes more intentional. Not because she forced him, but because he realizes that complacency won't work. Her standards raises awareness, and awareness is the doorway to commitment. This kind of woman doesn't rush emotional intimacy. She lets it grow naturally. She doesn't trauma bond, overshare, or rush connection to feel close. She understands that true intimacy is built through time, consistency, and mutual effort. That patience communicates self-respect. It tells a man that she values herself too much to bond recklessly. Men often test boundaries unconsciously. They may delay, pull back, or give mixed signals to see how a woman responds. A woman who knows her worth doesn't react emotionally. She observes. She adjusts her investment accordingly. That response teaches him more than any conversation ever could. It shows him that she is emotionally intelligent, self-led. A woman who doesn't negotiate her worth also doesn't center her life around a man. She has her own goals, routines, passions, and purpose. Her happiness doesn't rise and fall based on his attention. This doesn't make her distant or cold. It makes her whole. And wholeness is deeply attractive. Men are drawn to women who add to their lives, not women who need to be rescued from emptiness. When a man meets a woman like this, he feels both drawn and challenged. She doesn't overwhelm him, but she doesn't chase him either. She meets him where he is, but she doesn't lower herself to stay there. That balance creates tension in the best way. It makes him think. It makes him reflect. It makes him question whether he's showing up as his best self. A woman who knows her worth doesn't fear being alone. And that fearlessness changes everything. She doesn't stay in situations that drain her just to avoid loneliness. She understands that peace is better than potential. That belief radiates through her choices. Men can feel when a woman stays because she wants to, not because she's afraid to leave. This kind of woman also forgives, but she doesn't forget patterns. She offers grace without self-betrayal. She gives chances, but not endless ones. That balance of compassion and strength is rare. It creates emotional safety while maintaining boundaries. Men respect women who are kind without being weak. A man may not immediately rise to meet a woman who knows her worth. Sometimes he resists it. Sometimes he pulls back because it exposes where he is not yet ready. But even if he walks away, she stays on his mind because she didn't beg. She didn't chase. She didn't break herself to be chosen. She left with dignity. That dignity lingers. It echoes in his mind long after the interaction ends. He remembers how she handled disappointment, how she didn't argue her value, how she remained calm and self-assured. Those memories become reference points for him in future relationships. She becomes the standard, whether he admits it or not. A woman who knows her worth understands that love should feel expansive, not confusing. She doesn't romanticize inconsistency. She doesn't confuse intensity with intimacy. She listens to her intuition and trusts it. That trust creates alignment between her emotions and actions. Men feel that alignment. It feels safe and real. This kind of woman doesn't need to prove she's special. She knows it. And that knowing changes everything. It shapes how she loves, how she leaves, and how she allows herself to be treated. She doesn't demand commitment, but she inspires it. Not through pressure, but through presence. When a man encounters a woman who refuses to negotiate her worth, he may not be ready for her at first, but he never forgets her because she showed him what self-respect looks like in real time. And once a man has seen that, it stays with him.